everybody, we got John Splitoff here, and we are going to be talking about his new album. He's doing pretty well. Got over 100 million streams. He's cracked the top 10 at AC Radio. He's been everywhere from Bonnaroo to Lollapalooza. So you've been busy, brother. I'd love to talk about all that, including the new album. But before we do, why don't you just take us all the way back and let us know how you got into music to begin with?
Oh man, well, thank you for having me, man. Let's see. I got into music from music being played around my house, from my dad and my brother. I think my brother made a mixtape one time that had Marvin Gaye's "Sexual Healing"
Nice.
and "Return of the Mac"
Yes.
and some
Love that
Beatles
song.
on there and some Earth, Wind and Fire and Beatles. So I think that's when my ears kind of perked up, and my dad played guitar around the house. So I got into music that way. And whenever he'd play guitar, I'd be like, wow, this is incredible. How does a person do that? So I started playing some piano here and there and guitar. In middle school, I put together a band because I was obsessed with classic rock, and we had 2 gigs, and the only songs we played at those 2 gigs were Pink Floyd covers. So from there, I also played sports growing up and just assumed like sports was going to be a thing I did in high school because everybody in my family played sports. And then my freshman year, I just totally fell on my face when I tried to go out for sports, particularly baseball, specifically baseball. And then I was like, okay, well, damn, I got to find something that I can do that I enjoy doing. And I got into singing from then on. And that kind of opened a bunch of doors through the music program at my high school for studying music and performing with groups and learning theory. And I started writing music. And after that, I went to college. I studied at the University of Miami. I studied jazz. And long story short, I kept on writing and wanted to move to New York because I had a bunch of friends and family there. And I've been in New York for the past 7 years, just kind of recording and releasing music. And some of it's gotten listened to more than other songs, and made its way around the world. I'm very grateful for the people who've showed it love and started touring from that. So doing the same thing that I started doing once I graduated college.
Yeah, so I might have missed it. You said you moved to New York, but where did you grow up again?
I'm from outside Chicago, 20
Okay.
minutes from the city. Yeah,
Well, Chicago's not a bad music town either, but New York's definitely
that's
more
true.
of a hub, I'd say, for kind of commercial, music pursuits. But that
Yeah.
I was about to ask, that might explain your interest in jazz, maybe because you're living in a jazz city. You studied jazz, but where do you think that interest came from? Because it's funny, I was gonna say your dad had this great eclectic taste. He was like
Yeah.
Marvin Gaye, some soulful kind of sexy stuff, but then he's got the Beatles in there too.
Yeah.
And then
Well,
you're in kind of like you got kind of your psychedelic rock phase going on, and then you
yeah.
study jazz, which I mean there are some connections there, but where's that eclectic taste come from?
I just think it's from my family, like burning CDs growing up and like going on road trips. And like, I think there were always like the constant songs on every CD that I was just like, oh, this is like one of the greatest songs because it's on every CD. Like, for
Right.
example, What a Fool Believes by the Doobie Brothers, September.
Yes,
Um,
one of my all-time
you know,
favorites.
yeah. So, and I noticed that whenever I would discover something that I thought was incredible, like a guitar player, I was just really, really into different guitar players in middle school and early high school. I remember like playing instrumental music for my dad and being like, oh, I used to listen to this all the time growing up. So uh, Pat Metheny was a huge influence for me for just like really getting into jazz guitar. Not that I consider myself a true like jazz guitar player, but I appreciate how he is as a composer, just able to write really memorable melodies and then play really complex stuff. So I think from that, I just wanted to pursue jazz to be able to understand harmony a little bit more
Right.
and use that in writing and just feel more comfortable in the just having options and knowledge of how to implement this stuff when writing music.
Right. Was it, did you go to a music school, or was it more a more traditional college that had a music program?
So I went to University of Miami that has a music school within it, Frost School of Music.
Right.
um, but then yeah, there was also like everything else that University of Miami has.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
was jazz also just kind of, because you're going to a college, was that just one of the music programs that they happen to have? It's not like they had like a Pink
Yeah,
Floyd major, you know what I mean, or something like
right.
it. Was that part of it, possibly?
I wish they had a Pink Floyd major.
Yeah.
I Yeah. Um, yeah, I everywhere I applied, I think I applied for a different major
Mm.
for different schools. Like I at one place I did music ed, another place I did musical theater, and I think Miami worked out because I got in, and two, I had family close by in Florida. My dad actually lives in Fort Lauderdale, so I think just also the idea of getting out of Chicago and going somewhere else,
Yeah.
to just, I don't know, experience a different landscape was a big factor in that.
Right.
Um, and it was a good school. Like I learned a lot and then made a lot of friends, learned a lot from uh, my peers there, and just was able to focus on writing more.
Yeah. Did you have like, did you go through phases, or were you always kind of like eclectic as far as your musical taste? Because I feel like when I was really young, you kind of just like, I liked all kind of pop music, whatever I was hearing that I liked. And then in high school, I feel like, me and my friends just really honed in on punk rock, and so I felt like that was all I was playing in my car. Of course, you flip on the radio, you listen to top 40, whatever's on the radio, but as far as what I was buying and I was listening to, I had a very specific taste. And then it started, getting broader again after that. You get less
Yeah.
defined again, or just more open-minded again, because you feel like you're not so defined, as far as you don't have to be so typecasted into whatever genre you feel like it represents you. Did you feel like you went through that was with your classic rock stage, or have you always just kind of had an open mind with what you listened to and what you played?
I think for the most part, I've had an open mind, but just focused on songs. Like, it doesn't matter what genre. Just if I heard a song that I really loved, like that's what I would focus on. But then I might not know anything else by that artist, or I'd check out their other things and I'm like, okay, this is great too. But like I'd just be drawn back to the one like 3.5 minute song that isn't even one of their most popular songs or whatever, but it's just, I don't know, I just focus on that little thing, and that kind of just served as like a photograph to growing up. Like, oh, I remember that song when we went on a little road trip, or we went to Michigan from Chicago or something.
Yeah, those are the best songs that are you can attach to a memory, and that's actually I've some specific memories connected to that song September, so I forever remember that moment.
Right.
That
I mean,
that
it's amazing because that's just one of those songs that like everyone kind of has just like a magic thing. Do you remember the show Arliss on HBO?
sounds familiar, but I don't remember
All
exactly. No.
right. All right. It's about a sport agent.
Uh-huh.
And I remember there was just a scene where he's like riding a horse in the basketball court and September's playing. And that was my first introduction to that
Uh-huh.
song,
Yeah.
which is just like my first introduction to that song was like an HBO sync for that
Yeah.
song. And I was just like, what is this
Yeah.
song? And yeah.
HBO's got some great musical directors. They many a great song, and
Yes.
yeah, that's what's great. I mean, so many classic songs have been reintroduced to people for the first time through just, their favorite show or movie or something like that.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about how you went from, playing classic rock in high school and then you're studying jazz in college. How did that morph into playing some of these bigger gigs that you are now playing? Tell us a little bit about that journey.
Well, I moved to New York a couple months after I graduated from Miami, and I crashed on my buddy's couch, who is a incredible jazz musician, pianist. And he's my best friend in college. So through him, I was really influenced to like just learn more about jazz. Um, but I lived on his couch up in Harlem, and this was after over the summer in Chicago, I recorded 5 songs with another dear friend of mine. So I had like 5 recorded songs, called it an EP, moved to New York. I had my brother there. I had my best friend from college and a couple other friends. And I think I just like was trying my best to figure out who to play with and go out with him playing gigs and meet other musicians and try to form some ragtag group to play with. And I booked my first gig at Rockwood Music Hall a couple months after moving there, and I was just really inspired by that night. And during this period I was playing other gigs and using the money from those gigs to record and work with different producers and write more and pick up production myself little by little. And eventually I was able to put together like a really tight group of musicians. And I put out some music that really got some traction. So I was able to book some bigger shows, open for other artists on tour, and eventually sign my first record deal. And through that, I started playing those festivals. And yeah, man. And then after that, I just was slow to record my follow-up thing. And so then 2020 happened basically,
Yeah.
and and all that stopped.
Yeah. Do you remember
Yeah.
some of the points in your career where, because you talked about traction, do you remember a couple of things where you're like, oh, hey, this is working? Like, was it your live show that you think was helping you get traction? Was it did something catch on the right playlist? Was it a little bit of both? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think it was a little bit of both. I lucked out with one of my songs getting on a bunch of playlists, and unexpectedly just getting a lot of love from like Australia, Philippines, New Zealand. And it definitely started to grow really fast. I remember like I put out this one particular song, and it got over a couple months, like it got up to 1 million plays, and I was so proud of it. But then like trying to write music, I remember just being in a total slump trying to figure out what to write, and I was feeling really dark about the stuff I was coming up with. And it was like 3 a.m, and I refreshed my Spotify, and I was like, oh wait, why did these numbers just like quadruple? And the song got on a couple big playlists, and from there that definitely helped get me some traction. And yeah, man, like that was just, I think it was just inspiring to keep going. And definitely like that was a source of inspiration. Playing more shows was probably a bigger source of inspiration, I'd say, just like to have that direct contact and energy between you and a crowd, and hearing people like sing the lyrics to your song. It's the greatest feeling in the world.
Yeah. Do you think what came first, the chicken or the egg? You think the playlisting, how like all of a sudden people like the shows are starting to fill up a little bit more, and then it kind of feeds into itself, and yeah.
It definitely made a big impact, but I think that initial feeling of just like, this is what I want to be doing, I'm inspired by this, like that happened when there was like 10 people in the audience, you know.
Yeah.
And then that 10 people turned into 30 people and so on. And then because of this song getting a bunch of traction, like I played a couple hundred cap rooms, you know.
Yeah.
um so it definitely helped a lot.
Yeah. And so you're talking about you're sitting there one day and you're late at middle of the night, and it's kind of like one of those days you don't feel so great, and then you were kind of inspired to see, hey, wait, why am I so down? I should be stoked at how awesome this is going. Is that kind of what happened, and you were able to kind of dig yourself out of maybe a writer's block? Is that what was going on that day?
Yeah, but it's also like thinking about it, like things are temporary. So like, I'm going to be on these playlists and that's great. And my numbers are going way up, but then it's just important to remind yourself to keep being inspired and keep writing and keep creating and play as much as you can in front of people, which is, getting a little bit easier to do
A little
on the
bit, yeah.
horizon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah, I'm starting to see
so
more and more festival advertisements on my social media feed now. I'm every time that I see one, I'm like, "What's the date? When's this say this is going to happen?" Because
I
I
know.
I really hope it does happen. Hopefully we can get to where we need to be and stay where we need to be. Because man, it's been rough without live music.
I know, man. Well, I just got here to this hotel I'm staying at. I'm playing a little show here tomorrow, just like an intimate thing for some folks up here. But from my hotel window, I heard people playing music like from 50 feet away,
Yeah,
and I was like, "Is that a violin? Is that a
yeah.
banjo? Oh my god, people are singing!" So it's feeling good, man.
It's
People
yeah. It's
are
starting. It's starting to come back.
slowly, yeah,
It's kind of like the bar restaurant situation right now for most of the music things that I've been seeing in Los Angeles. Anyways, it's starting to come back, but it's still like you got to remain seated, or it's not the
right.
there's something about just standing. I mean, who would have thought that was a thing you would miss, but just standing in a room, whether it be a bar or a live show, or being able to dance and move, like uh, being kind of in this imaginary confine of your table, it just isn't the same. It's way better than nothing, but it's not the same.
Yeah, man. I mean, the sticky floor, shoulder to shoulder,
Yeah,
that'll come back eventually too.
right. Yeah, I mean, sometimes you get annoyed by having to be shoulder to shoulder in a show, but maybe now we'll never complain about it again, at least for a
Yeah,
while.
yeah. Now you're like, man, I really wish I was just bumping
Yeah,
shoulders with a stranger.
I really wish some big sweaty dude was slightly taller than me right in front of me right now while I watch this show. And
Yeah. Hey, man, can you like, duck a little bit? Like,
yeah.
come on.
So new album, tell us a little bit about it, because it's you talked about your EP that you put out that had some great traction, but you got your
Hmm.
full length now, All In. What can we expect? You just dropped it last Friday, so that's exciting. Congrats.
Thank you so much, man. Yeah, this record has been a long time coming for me. It is just a huge relief to finally get it out into the world, and I feel just really, really proud of it, man. Um, it's the first full length record I've ever put out. To this point, I've put out singles and EPs, but this kind of just feels like the most cohesive body of work I've put out so far.
What was the difference? I mean, because you put out an EP that did well. Did it takes more discipline to write like a full LP. Like how much did you have to write? Was most of what you wrote, did most of what you wrote end up on the LP? Were there a bunch of things that you kind of threw out? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I wrote a lot by myself and with other people. And I think after like, I don't know, 4 or 5 months, I just took 11 songs and I was like, all right, this is going to be it. These, like, I don't know how I'm going to sequence these things together, but when like this feels like it's long enough and I could see this being a record somehow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it just took a whole lot of overthinking and making like microscopic changes to this and that. And it turned out the way it did. And I
Yeah.
couldn't be happier with it. There's not one thing I would change, honestly. And that's really crazy for me because like I'm always like, whoa, what if it was like this? Whoa, but what if this was just like a little bit louder, you know?
Yeah. Well, you'd hope after some quote unquote overthinking that's how you would feel. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that sounds great, man. That sounds like what more can an artist ask for, than to be perfectly satisfied with what you're putting out at that moment.
Yeah. So I'm inspired by the release. People have shown it a lot of love already.
Yeah.
And so I started writing these songs like end of 2019. And I think it was a conflicting time for me just because I was dealing with some writer's block. I was dealing with just not feeling great about the music I was writing. And it just took a long time. And it was a lot of time to just be working on it by myself. I would have these writing sessions with other people, which was a great like burst of energy to bring other people into the fold. But then I kind of just, I don't know, I got to this place where the days kind of blurred together. And then I eventually went out to LA to work with some other people. I picked the songs that I was like feeling good about. And to get even more inspired about them, I brought them to other people to work with and get them across the finish line.
Mm.
And so that was like February 2020.
Yeah.
And, that's when my biggest worry was like, all right, the hi-hats, what mics are we using for the drums,
Uh-huh.
And then as February went by and March came around, we were like, dude, what is going on?
Yeah.
And I ended up finishing all the tracking and flying back the day that quarantine was issued in New York.
Wow.
And I was just like, dude, I have no idea what's going to happen, but at least I've got the recording done.
Yeah. Yeah. Now you can just tinker with the mix and the editing and all that.
Which ended up taking a whole lot of time.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I think it was a nice thing to be distracted by for the remainder of the year.
Yeah.
Just tinkering with it and writing even more for it. What was I going to say?
When you were writing even more for it, did you end up adding a couple more tracks then near the tail end, or?
I ended up adding one more song that I had the instrumental for prior to going out to LA.
Right.
But I think with the like lockdown happening and, I think I kind of found comfort in just a lot of people dealing with, I don't want to say it was like therapeutic, but like I really enjoyed working from home and being able to talk to other people about working from home, if that makes sense. Like I found like there was just a comfort for me in like everyone going through something, I guess, when like even though it was a horrible year and I don't wish that year to happen ever again, but like I don't know, it was just great to actually like be able to talk to people more openly about like what they're going through, how they're feeling.
Yeah. That's true.
Because I think, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it's true. I feel like everyone, especially early on, I feel like everyone's simultaneously was having these like, I don't know if you jumped, like people were downloading new apps like House Party. Like suddenly I was having deeper conversations with people who are great friends of mine, but maybe I hadn't seen in a while, or, like you were, because that's all there was to do, was to talk. It's kind
Right.
of like, I remember when I was in high school, like talking on the phone used to be a lot more popular than it is, I think, probably now. Now it's like everyone's texting
Right.
and social media. But when I was growing up, long conversations with friends or girls would be like, it's something you would do all the time. You know what I mean? And
Dude, you had numbers memorized growing
yeah,
up.
yeah, totally. And so there was a little bit of like a revival of that kind of, we're on a podcast right now, a lot of that long form conversation with people or people that you don't know.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So and of course, like you said, it's to go through something crappy is crappy, but to share an experience, it's definitely comforting.
Yeah. I mean, I think everyone kind of was coming face to face with the days blurring together. And I think I was feeling a lot of that prior to lockdown, just from like recording at home, and now everyone's working at home. So it's like, oh, man, all right, now we can talk about this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, do you feel like are you starting now to talk about, okay, so when are we gonna maybe get back out there and start playing? Is that like part of the conversation now, or what's it looking like for you roughly? Do you think, just as someone who's in the industry?
Yeah, slowly but surely, probably in the fall, something will happen.
Yeah.
We're getting into rehearsals now, and the group is learning the music. But I'm playing like one-off things here and there, playing some solo stuff. Like the thing I'm playing tomorrow is a solo thing. But I am very anxious to get out ASAP
Yeah.
with a band and do it properly.
Isn't it, I don't know when the last time you have rehearsed, but isn't it, I'm in a band and we were just playing for a virtual show that we did a month or two ago, and just playing live with like your buddies again is like, it's the closest thing that I've got to a live show. It's like we are the
I
live show
know.
for ourselves, and it was so great and it just felt so good.
Yeah, I mean, I still haven't played with the group I play with since COVID hit. But we're going to next month, and I'm very, very excited about it. But I played with I went back to University of Miami a couple weeks ago, and they had me play a little a festival they put on, and the ensemble I used to play with learned all of my music, including the new music. So I flew in and we had like 1 hour long rehearsal, and I was just blown away by how well they knew it. And I was like, oh, at the same time, like I haven't played with band forever. Like it's my first time playing with other musicians.
Yeah.
And it was great, man. They crushed it.
Yeah. So John, you've had some great deal of success already, so congratulations. But
Thanks,
we
man.
like
Thank you.
to we like to end the interview by asking, if you had one piece of advice for aspiring artists, what would it be?
Just make things that make you happy. I think the most important thing is to do it create for yourself, because then no one can tell you otherwise if it's bad or whatever. I think that's something I forget to do often. But when I do make something and I stay up till 4 a.m, like singing a melody and coming up with a little instrumental in the dark, I will wake up with like 3 hours of sleep the next morning and just be like still energized about it. That
Yeah.
gives me life. And I think other creative people, whether you're an artist, a writer, a musician, instrumentalist, like that's the lifeblood of creativity, and keeping on with what you do.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, isn't it a great thing that it doesn't, as long as you're doing it for yourself, then you're not beholden to anyone else's opinion about what you're doing. You could just, if you love it, you love it, and it doesn't matter what anyone else says about it.
Totally. I mean, and then you could think about, okay, like I could see people dancing to this at this time of night and whatever. You could start to envision like how people can interpret it. But I
Yeah.
think overall, just like you start with believing in it yourself and just being like that first like 20 minutes of working on something is like that's when the initial magic happens, right?
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, considering the situation or how you envision it is totally part of it. So it's not like you want to discount, the type of vibe you want to put out there, but that's just kind of part of the fun of it. And as long as you're
Yeah.
doing that how you want to do it, it's still for you.
Yeah. And try to find like the like I don't know, like create something small every day, like a little something different, just to it doesn't even have to be like writing a song, or like it could be making like a 10-second loop or something, or like a little instrumental or a beat. I don't know. Just creating something like that keeps you inspired and keeps you energized.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice that so many people could benefit from. Just it's like a muscle, and and just like a muscle, like a little bit every day will keep you in a lot better shape than full blown workouts once a month or something like that.
Bringing it backward.